I just wanted to do a quick fun video on some things that surprised me when I moved to Canada. I moved to Canada from the UK, but I am Australian, I'm not British, despite how I may sound. I've lived in a few different countries. I love looking at the differences between countries. Now, if you see me looking down there, I do have some notes on my laptop just so I remember everything to tell you guys. And also, this is going to be part one because I was writing this out and I had so I have plenty to make a part two, and I probably will. First of all, I want to talk about the size of the country. Canada is massive. It is the second largest country in the world, and I believe the UK is around 38 times smaller than Canada. So obviously I knew this. These are basic facts that you can Google. Something that I noticed being from Australia to the UK, and I guess it's kind of more similar to Canada in that sense, is that the distance that people will drive for basic things, because of the size of the country, is way bigger than you would drive in the UK. So for example, I feel like in the UK you would not drive an hour for lunch, while I feel like in Canada you definitely would do that, and the same with Australia, you definitely would do that there from my experience growing up. But also just going to the supermarket, going for a little weekend getaway, all that kind of stuff, people are going to drive way longer than they would in the UK. For example, in the UK, like if Jake and I did a weekend getaway to the lakes, 1.5 to 2.5 hour drive. I feel like here that is nothing. I definitely know people who are going to drive 5 hours somewhere for a weekend getaway. Like if you're going out to Kelowna or that kind of area in BC from Vancouver, you are going to drive for ages. Also, if you want to get from one city to another, unlike the UK where you can drive like 20 minutes, maybe a couple hours, that is going to be hours of flying. There are pros and cons to flying, there are pros and cons to driving, and of course you can drive in Canada, but that is going to be possibly days of driving depending on where you're going. And building on from this, my next thing that shocked me is the price of flights. And I don't necessarily think it's because flights are expensive in Canada, although they are really expensive, but I think in the UK and Europe we are just spoiled for the price of flights. From London to like a European country for like 20 quid. And I guess just because Canada is so big, it's gonna be a couple $100 maybe, especially if you want bags and everything else included. I did a little bit of Googling on this. I just mainly gathered it was because the country is so big, but apparently it's also because there is less competition, and I have definitely noticed that. In the UK and in Europe there are so many different airlines, but in Canada there are less, which isn't bad, but apparently that's one of the reasons why the prices might be more expensive. Okay, the next thing is the cost of energy. Now this is a bit of a topical one. Obviously we all know energy prices are crazy, especially in the UK. I don't have the biggest experience of other countries. I've heard France and some other places as well, but in my experience the UK energy prices were going insane before I left. Now I did a little bit of research on this, just some interesting facts. So I have my laptop here. So in the UK apparently around 63% of energy is created with fossil fuels, while in Canada 58% of the electricity is made with hydroelectric. And here in BC, I know that I pay my energy bill to BC Hydro, and I think that's great because obviously that is more environmental and it's just like cleaner renewable energy. However, in my research I also found that Canada consumes a lot more energy than the UK. Apparently this is for a lot of reasons, but one of them is that there are a lot more weather extremities here, so it gets a lot colder, and also I would say personally it gets a lot hotter. So I know in summer I was using aircon almost every day, and I use heating quite a lot of the time. I deal with the cold better than I deal with the heat, and we're using a lot more of that kind of central air when we've lived in Canada. And also when we, and I mean we, me and my boyfriend Jake, if you don't know my channel, when we've lived in the UK versus here, we definitely did not have aircon in the UK. So yeah, we are using it more in Canada. But again, this is just very basic research, but these are the general trends I found. And the article I was reading had a lot of technical language, but what I mainly gathered is that electricity in Canada can be up to 10 times cheaper than the UK. And just anecdotally, I am paying about 10 times less per month in Canada for my electricity and gas than I was paying in the UK. Another thing about price, but the opposite this time, the price of cheese. I was reading an article from Mental Floss to see why this is, and apparently the Canadian cheese and dairy industry is different to that of the US and the EU, and obviously now the UK has left the EU, but I'm assuming it's a similar thing. In the UK and the EU and stuff like that, the government subsidizes dairy farmers, but apparently the Canadian government doesn't subsidize dairy farmers, and the farmers get financial support in other ways from the government. Again, I'm not an expert in Canadian politics and farming policy. This is just what I got from an article. So a ball of mozzarella from Asda, which I will put on the screen if I can, costs 95 pence. And for this certain ball of mozzarella, it costs £7.60 per kilo. And for a slightly bigger ball of mozzarella from Walmart in Canada, the ball of mozzarella costs $7.17, which is $21.1 per kilo, which is equal to about £13.01. The Canadian ball of mozzarella per kilo is almost double the price of the UK ball of mozzarella. Now, I'm not here to give you a lesson on cheese. I just remember this was one of the things, and I think I made a TikTok about it when I first moved, but I went to the grocery store, and don't get me wrong, some of the grocery prices here are insane, especially if you don't know where to go or if you live in downtown Vancouver. But I just remember the price of cheese scared me. You cannot buy alcohol from the supermarket. You have to go to a liquor store. I should know because I'm Australian and it is the same in Australia. In the UK, I feel like corner stores have such a big culture of being a great place to buy drinks, and obviously if you're in Asda or Sainsbury's, you can just pick up a bottle of wine while you're shopping for your dinner. However, here there are specific liquor stores. So for example, in Vancouver, the main one I've seen is BC Liquor, and like I said, this is very similar to Australia where I come from, but I moved to the UK when I was 15. My entire experience with drinking has been in the UK, so I was kind of shocked. You'll see wine and then you'll get closer and it will be a non-alcoholic wine, but I do also think there's a really cool like soft drink culture, and there's a lot of like nice fancy soft drinks, and maybe that's because you can't buy drinks in supermarkets. And another thing that's interesting is because obviously I said the store that I mainly see in Vancouver is called BC Liquor, which obviously is British Columbia Liquor. A lot of the stores are government run, at least tons of the ones I see. Again, for my googling, I was trying to figure out why this was. Apparently it's a little bit to do with prohibition or something like that, but not all the stores are government run. There are private stores and some like wine shops and breweries and stuff that sell alcohol. Okay, I'm so glad I split this into two parts because I've been going on. Here's the last thing that shocked me when I moved to Canada, for this video at least, because there are tons more. Summer and lake days. Obviously having a summer wasn't a shock, but Canada has a certain reputation for being cold. I know definitely that people I know weren't expecting it to be so hot and summery when I moved over, and I did move over in the summer, because I would post photos of me at the beach or in swimwear and people couldn't believe that I was in Canada, which might sound silly if you're from Canada, but there is a stereotype. But BC, where I'm living at the minute, is famous for its good weather, which is arguable, but I mean the first few months when I was here, that summer did definitely show that. We had plenty of days over 25, I think that was the average, and then we had quite a few days over 30 degrees as well. Jake and I, we were at the beach every single week this summer. But like I said, the thing I love most about Canadian summers are the lakes, and this is just completely different to summer culture in the UK. I just never experienced a lake day before until I moved here. So I'm trying to think of the lakes I've been to. The main ones I went to were a couple small ones in Jasper, I'll put pictures up on the screen, and then also Harrison Lake, which is about an hour out of Vancouver, and the water is so beautifully clear. Obviously Canada is a bit famous for its bright blue lakes, and I don't think I've swam in any of those, but I have seen them in Alberta. But even in the lakes that aren't bright blue, they are so clear and beautiful and freezing cold, and your surroundings, at least at all the lakes I've been to, are gorgeous forest and mountains, and it's just so pretty, and everyone's swimming and have paddle boards and floaties and little boats and everything like that. I just thought I'd bring this up because this is not something I was excited for when I moved to Canada. Obviously I know about like lakes, you hear about it in like summer movies in the US and stuff like that, but it is now one of my favorite things, and I'm so looking forward to it for summer in 2023. I have to say it is completely superior to a beach day. You don't have to worry about sand, you don't have to worry about salt water or anything like that, and it's a lot less busy. And like I said, this video is in comparison to the UK. I have to say it is superior to getting drunk in a park. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I just wanted to do a little bit of a video about Canada because obviously I moved here and I don't do tons of videos about that at the minute, but I definitely do want to do a part 2 to this. If you guys have moved to Canada or visited Canada, do leave some comments down below if there's anything that shocked you, and otherwise I just hope you enjoyed this video. If you did like, please do like, and please do subscribe. There are tons of Canada vlogs on my channel and more to come, and I hope to see you guys next time.